Welcome back. The title of this mini lecture is American Industrialization, Part 2. We're going to talk about 5 terms that, as you go to do your readings about this tumultuous time period within American history, these should hopefully help you to be able to kind of key in on things to kind of get a sense of what's going on. All right? So let's dig into it. First term, Pullman. All right? Now, Mr. Pullman, George Pullman, kind of created his own town on part of the south side of Chicago. It was its own separate community for a while, and he had a factory there to produce rail cars. And the Pullman Car Company was, quite a luxurious, company at the end of the 19th century and in the early 20th century. Rail travel was the thing in this period, and so being able to travel in relative comfort as opposed to what existed before was considered a very strong statement as far as class goes. Now, Pullman was somewhat progressive. He wanted to be able to kind of meet all of his workers' needs as he saw it. But by the time you get to the early 1890s, 1892, 1893, there is somewhat of an economic downturn in America. And this depression that hits the country, of course, affects all industries. And Pullman decides that he's going to cut wages. But since his town is a community where he owns the homes, he doesn't cut rents. And you start to see the formation. You've got the formation so-called the American Railway Union. They want to be able to push back against this. Individuals like Eugene Debs are a part of this. And there is a strike. And it's eventually unsuccessful. But the Pullman company here, right, of course, is relatively tarnished because of this, at least in the eyes, of course, of workers. But it really demonstrated kind of this nature of the question of unions and their acceptability in the workplace and the debate over unionization as it relates to something called freedom to contract or freedom of contract. Because unions aren't fully recognized, really, in the end of the 19th century. Number 2, Homestead. Now, this is an area just next to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and there was a strike there and violence in 1892. So, like in Pullman, right, there's questions of downturn. So Andrew Carnegie and the Carnegie Steel Works, Carnegie Steel Corporation, right, Carnegie and his leadership, the main guy on the ground for a lot of this is a guy named Ford Frick. They decide to basically shut this new plant. The workers kind of come out and protest. And you have what are these Pinkerton detectives, these private security guys who come in, and they're met with violence. And gunfights kind of rage out. A number of these guys are caught and captured, eventually turned over. National Guards called in. Really is kind of a battle raging through Pittsburgh at this time in 1892. Again, the Union doesn't gain recognition into the workplace as a result of this, but really was a reflection of this, sort of dichotomy, this separation that existed between workers and the working class and these individuals, like Carnegie. Number 3, Ludlow. All right, so the Ludlow Massacre happens in 1914. You've got a state militia, which is kind of pro-corporation, pro-Rockefeller, this kind of thing. And what happens is they attack a camp where family members of striking workers are, and women and children are killed. Dozens of women and children are killed. It is a brutal massacre, a brutal killing for which there is no sense and no justification other than abject inhumanity. And it's one of those sort of aspects of the late 19th, early 20th century, this question of rights of protest and assembly and questions of the nature of employment and the treatment of workers and individuals. All right, this brings us to our 4th point, Mother Jones. Mother Jones. Mother Jones was a tireless activist and worker in the second half of the 19th century and the early 20th century. She's by Ludlow. Mother Jones comes from Ireland, loses her family, experiences a lot of pain and privation in her life, and becomes a tireless agitator for the working class, for labor, and for perhaps most notedly, with what's called the Children's March. And so she's kind of present in a lot of these incidents. She's also at the mine wars in West Virginia. So Mother Jones, hint, hint, Mother Jones. Number 5, the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire. This happens in the early 1900s. This is in New York. The owners of the shirtwaist company, they had closed the doors, they'd locked everything. So when a fire breaks out in a place like this, in a textile industry, there's a lot there to kind of set things off. And since there is so the fire companies, right? So they can get ladders up to where these individuals are in this large building, but they can't get close enough, right? The ladders don't go high enough, and so what happens is those who cannot get out basically are jumping to their deaths in the street. It's a brutal, and horrible event. Over 100 individuals are killed, mostly young women who are working in these conditions. All right, thanks so much.